Across Newcastle and the Hunter, 2NURFM 103.7. Time to scratch your heads and have a look at some of the things that are happening in the world of education. We do that with Professor John Fischetti from the University of Newcastle, who today you promised that you've got a couple of pretty simple answers to solve what may seem a complex problem. So, teacher shortages, let's get your thoughts firstly, mate, on where and why you think we're at where we're at and where are we at?
Yeah, good morning, Mark. In the last fortnight since our last appearance, the whole world has gotten shaken up again in teacher education and in the notion of the lack of supply of teachers. You know, during the pandemic and all of the ramifications of learning from home, teachers gained respect all around Australia, all around the world for the versatility and flexibility, and also because some parents were really grateful when schools opened again because they got to send their kids there and go, oh my gosh, teachers are amazing. But it seems we've lost a lot of that mojo because around Australia, there's probably 4,000 to 5,000 person teacher shortage emerging, ongoing for the next several years. I think it's about that in New South Wales right now. It's always been the case in rural areas, out in the bush, and in certain disciplines in the maths and the sciences. It's been emerging for a while. So the big issue is the federal government has started to pay attention. The state government has started to pay attention. In the last 2 weeks, there have been all these proclamations and roundtables and big edicts that have come out.
So, I mean, if we go back before 2020, I'm almost getting lost in the timeline on this here. But if we go back before that, what was the situation like versus what we're like now? Because there are still a lot of teachers that are gradually being allowed to come back into the system that were told, no, you're not welcome anymore. So is that's certainly part of the problem, but how much was there before that?
Yeah, great question, Mark. The population of teachers has been declining in terms of school leavers going into teaching for the last several years. In addition, many baby boomers, the last generation of baby boomers, of which that's my generation, are now about to exit or exiting. And the working conditions of teachers, and shockingly, perhaps at kindergarten, year 1, year 2, right now, teachers are turning into more bureaucrats and administrators of assessment and record keepers, and they've almost taken that joy out of teaching by turning them into test givers and note takers. And in some schools, they've actually taken the curriculum away from teachers, and teachers are teaching what's handed to them with no real personalization. You put that with the stresses and strains of the last couple of years, the Great Resignation, which has allowed people to make decisions to do whatever they want and get out of it. We're left with a little bit of a crisis. Add to that, what I've talked to you about for years is in initial teacher ed, we've overregulated. We've put so many new requirements to come in under the name of quality that some of our top HSC students in Australia have said, that's just too many hoops. I'm not going to do that. So it's been a perfect storm coming and going to culminate in a shortage anyway. It's been exaggerated because some people are just saying, I have enough. It's also been couched by some as we need to increase teachers' pay. And certainly that's a piece of it. Teachers are not paid, and they have not been paid at what would be a world standard. Nobody comes into teaching for the pay, but that's part of it. But I think this is more the working conditions of teachers not being tolerable mixed in with an already exit from baby boomers and others who are ready to walk away.
Well, let's look at the working side of it, because you kind of touched on I don't want to do all this extra, it's all too hard, it's too whatever. In the commercial world, I mean, if you're a company wanting people to spend their money versus your competitor, you have to make it easy. Otherwise, stuff that'll go somewhere else. If you're wanting to choose a career for yourself, if you look, here's a couple of things that I might want to do, that's all too hard. Yeah. Why would I want to spend time doing more compliance and more paperwork, etc., as opposed to the actual job? I'll go and find something else where I can do more of the job.
Yes, and that's a common sense response, and almost sounds like we could do this. I want to add to that a couple solutions I think that are very doable. A lot of the shortage has been created by the unattractive way in which we have treated teachers and we treat the profession. And so the solution is probably in more people currently out in other industries who are a little bored with that, ready to step away, and who would really love to teach, maybe always would want to finish their career teaching. In bringing them back in, if we gave them forgivable loans, that would mean if you come to teaching, Mark, and you do our Masters of Teaching or a program that gets you through to the classroom, you have your HECS debt forgiven if you teach for 3 to 5 years, and we could contextualize that where you taught. If you go out west, in 3 years, you get your loans forgiven. In 5 years, maybe in a more elite situation. And if we add scholarships to that for those areas that are hard to staff, in science and maths, special education, With those three right there, we would generate a population of people who would be able to afford to transition. Because for some folks, they can't step away to go to school for a year. They're really stuck in that interim trying to run their families. We probably tap the amount of school leavers that we're going to get, that percentage. We could get a little bit higher. It's really going to be in those people out there today thinking, I'd really like to teach, but I just can't stop, redirect myself. The joy of teaching, the love of children, the opportunity to be creative and invent and just enjoy the lifestyle of teachers, which still has the pleasantry of some holidays and predictable times, which are great. The advantages are so great. We don't want to overstate the negatives. But unless we do something like that, forgivable loan schemes, some scholarships, as well as some extra incentives for people to go into situations that are hard to staff and maybe always have, we're going to end up just circulating ideas. The minister in New South Wales has put out this $130,000 for a few teachers to go out and be called the excellent mentor teachers is a gimmick. So we pay 5 teachers $130,000. It's not going to fix the issue. Every child deserves to have a great teacher. We're going to have to pay for it. One way to pay for it is incentivize it, and that's the way the free market works. Teaching is a great profession, but we're going to have to encourage people, not just assume that current teachers can do more or that there's somehow a problem in university education or in professional learning. That's the ultimate excuse, and they're sort of copping out on the real decisions. I think those are easy wins.
I think we're about halfway through this, but unfortunately, John, we have to put a full stop
on a
comment today. But thanks for opening up the idea of this, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, in future visits. Thanks for your time.
Thanks. It's a gift that keeps on giving, so it'll come back again.
There he is, our Professor of Education from the University of Newcastle, John Fischetti at 2NURFM 103.7.
A broadcast service of the University of Newcastle.